Hi, welcome back to this series of videos for Fiji's SDG budget tag. Picking up from where we left off in the last video, we are going to compile a dashboard that looks like this. This is actually the interactive version of the picture that I was showing you before. And what we want to do is compile the same dashboard, the same kind of charts, although you can definitely add others where you can interact with the different SDG estimations and try to see specifically what is being connected to, in this case, let's say SG3 within the budget. So that's what we want to compile. We also want to add a table. We want to add some subtotals for the information that you are capturing through the SDG budget tag. But let's go back to the to the methodology that is behind this. Let's remember the 5 steps that will be behind this procedure that we are going to start now. Uh, Overall, the SDG budget tag has 5 steps. The first one is to compile the inputs. The first one is the budget statements, which is kind of obvious. We need, if we want to do an SDG budget tag, we need the budget. In this case, the budget was available. That was available was in PDF as a PDF file. The second thing that you have to take into consideration within the inputs component is to choose a budget state. Um, eh, what usually happens is that it's countries prefer to work with the approved budget so that there is less uncertainty in terms of other what's happening at other stages of the budget. And the third input that we need is the list of 169 global SDG targets. So what we're going to do is create a linkage between what's on the PDF of the budget and the list of 169 SDG targets. That's what we're going to do. That's in terms of the inputs, which is the first step. The second one is to, at a narrative level, is to allocate each expense line to multiple SDG targets. It could be one, it could be three. We want to limit the number of SDGs that we can allocate to each expense. Um, the reason for that might be evident as we go on, but the more SDG targets you decide to allocate for a single budget line, the more it will take you to go through the entire budget and to construct the SDG budget tag. So you want to limit, and that's the way we're going to proceed here. We're going to limit the exercise to up to 3 SDG targets. That's a keyword, up to 3 SDG targets. You can choose one, two, or three. So within that narrative alignment, what we do is we look at the objective of the expense line. That is, we got information from the head, from the ministry, of the department or agency. We have some information on what of the objective, overall objective of that particular ministry for that specific fiscal year. And we also have some, in some cases, some outcome indicators or some additional information that will be useful to allocate the SDG target. So the first component within that is to compile all programs in a single spreadsheet. We want to make sure that we compile only the information that is needed from the PDF file. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we're going to determine which programs or expense lines are administrative related. And that's going to be important in the next steps. But we want to allocate basically signal or flag which expenses of those are administrative and which ones are not. Then, as mentioned, we're going to allocate up to 3 SDG targets for each expense line, and we want to take into account as much information as possible. The reason for that is that sometimes budgets do not have enough information allocate multiple SG targets. So this is just a common challenge that we have whenever there is not information on the budget, or whenever there's not a results-based budgeting, which is the case in most countries that actually do not have a results-based budget, right? So with that in mind, we move on to the third topic, third step in our SDG, in the construction of our SDG budget tag, which is related to the distribution, the financial distribution of one particular expense line to those targets that were chosen before, those SDG targets. So you basically take the resources for one line and you allocate them to a main SDG target and up to two other secondary SDG targets, right? So the rules for that financial distribution can be changed and can be chosen based on what you as government officers need, or what the government is leaning towards. But basically, we're going to do an example here. We're going to do the SDG budget tag, allocating 75% of the resources for one budget line to a main SDG target, and then we're going to allocate the other 25% of the expense line to those secondary SDG targets that were chosen. It could be one or it could be two. If there are two, well, it's obvious that we're going to have to split that 25% into two SDG targets. So you can choose multiple ways to allocate that remaining 25% for secondary targets. What we're going to do here, but you can choose your own way, is that we're going to allocate evenly that 25% in the case that there are two secondary SDG targets. So that means that let's do an example. If we have one expense line, we're going to allocate 75% of those resources to the main SDG target, and then we're going to allocate the remaining 25% to those two other SDG targets. So that means we're going to allocate 12.5% to those two other SDG targets. The fourth step here in the procedure for this particular SG budget tag methodology is to create a separate treatment between administrative expenses and non-administrative expenses. The reason for that is that this methodology assumes that administrative resources are very important to support non-administrative expenses. And the way I like to think about this, and I usually use this analogy, is related to the education sector. If you think of a program that is trying to support, let's say, better test scores at the educational level, let's say for primary schools, primary and secondary schools, um, you cannot only consider those non-administrative components, because no matter what kind of training you provide to students, if you don't pay the bills, electricity bills or water bills, or you have adequate infrastructure. So as you can see, administrative expenses are very important to support non-administrative expenses. However, when it comes to this particular methodology, we're going to separate them into two different procedures. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take the non-administrative resources that we see in the budget, and we're going to do the SDG budget tag for those, and that way we see what kind of distribution there is in terms of financing for SDGs throughout the resources that are of non-administrative nature. We compile that by by entity or by head or by ministry, and then we use that information in terms of the distribution of financing, of SDG financing, and we allocate that same distribution from the non-administrative expenses to the administrative expenses. We're going to do it step by step throughout the next videos. And finally, the fifth step is to design a visual dashboard where you and the final users of the SDG budget tag can actually interact with the budget data in SDG language. In order to do that, we need to apply some data transformations that are required, and then we're going to do an interactive dashboard for that. But let's go ahead and remember the um, the definition that we used in the last video for an SDG budget tag. An SDG budget tag is simply the allocation of labels to expense lines. So allocate, you see an expense and you allocate three labels, up to three labels. So let's do an example here. Let's say an institution A within sector B or within head XYZ has a non-administrative project that has a commitment for, let's say, 100 million. Let's use dollars, and then you can do the conversion. But just to make it easy, let's take 100 million, right? That is the total amount of resources that we see originally in the budget statement. So as mentioned, the first step is to allocate up to three SDG targets based on the objective of that particular ministry, and specifically depending on the objective of that particular project or program. It could be a project or a program depending on how the budget is presented. In this case, we see the head, we see the sector, we see the narrative that is contained within the first part of the budget statement, and then we allocate. In this case, this is just an example. SDG target 9.1, which is related to infrastructure. We also have as a secondary target SDG 16.6, which is related to strong institutions, and 6.1. That's an example. We're going to go over the details in a bit. So what we end up doing in the third stage is to distribute that amount, the total amount of $100 million, into $75 million, which is 75% for the main SDG target, and then we take 12.5 to each of the secondary SDG targets. That way we split the main resource that we see for each budget line into main and secondary SDG targets. I know we already have calculations for the SDG budget tag for 2025, but just to show you what kind of how big the exercise is. For Fiji's 2023 and 2024 budget, we had 48 MDAs and approximately 265 expense lines. So what that means is that from the budget statement, from the PDF file, we narrow it down. We take that information from PDF and we put it into an Excel file, and we end up with 265 rows. With those rows, different rows, you can summarize everything that's happening within Fiji's national budget, right? So that's sort of the extent that we have to do. We have to do a similar exercise like we just did, but 265 times, right? So with that in mind, remember we will go through 5 steps: inputs, the narrative alignment or distribution, then the budgetary distribution, then we are going to do separate treatment of administrative and non-administrative expenses, and finally we're going to do the visual component and the interactive component so that the user can interact with this data. This is how the exercise looks like. Here we have in the first part of the screen, we have how an example, a page from the head number 7, the Ministry of Employment, Productivity, and Industrial Relations, and it gives us a sense. This is just how the budget is presented. We get information. Well, as you know, in the first page there is the statement, the narrative statement on what the ministry is aiming for in this fiscal year, and so we have that information, and we're going to use all these different components, specifically. I mean, not all of it, but we're going to use for the fiscal year that you decide to choose. You're gonna take program number one, activity number one, and the total amount of budget for that. Similarly, in the next line or the next row in your Excel file, you're gonna use program number one, activity number two, and then get the total for that. And then we're gonna compile that into an Excel file. But we also need obviously the list of 169 SDG targets. Your question might be, where can I get that information? The answer is very easy. UN DESA has a web page for you to look at. If you Google UN DESA and SG target framework, you will get a downloadable version of all 169 SG targets, including indicators, suggested indicators to measure. So you will get the 17 SDGs, a definition for those. You'll get the 169 targets, which is the more specific version for the 17 SDG goals. And besides that list of 169 SDG targets, which is the one I'm showing you on the side, you also get a suggested list of indicators. That's what they call the SG framework. So make sure you also download the latest version. So what we're going to do is do exactly that. But let's go ahead and pause this component, and let's go over to the actual files. So as mentioned, this is how the budget looks like. What we usually have in the first component of the Excel of the PDF file for the budget is basically, as you know, a description of what the ministry is trying to do for this particular fiscal year. And then we have the information that we have. So let's go ahead and get the file. I've already put down all the numbers that we need. For you to be able to follow, I'm going to do it once again. Please remember that we are going to compile only the information that is needed for the SDG budget tag. Um, we're not going to use all the information that is in the PDF, but rather only a specific component. So we're going to take head number 4. We're going to do the example with the Finance, Strategic Planning, and National Development and Statistics Ministry. We obviously have the functional category, which is General Administration. We are not going to need that for the moment, so let me go ahead and hide that one. And we have a list of programs and activities that are related to that budget of that particular ministry. So let's go ahead and look at the first component back in the PDF file. This is actually the budget for 2024 and 2025. So as you will see, we have head number 4, which is the one we have here. Head number 4 for the MDA, which is the Ministry of Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics. We have program 1, which is related to policy and administration. That's what we put down here. And we have activity number 1. We want to understand what kind of activity it is. And it says general administration. So that already gives us a sense on whether it's administrative or non-administrative. I created some labels in case we needed to uniquely identify the expenses, but I don't think we're going to use that information. So let's go ahead. As you can see, we have 57, this is going to be 57 million Fijian dollars allocated for that activity number 1 of program number 1. So that's what, if you see this 57,886, it's exactly what we have here. So basically we just copied and pasted the information, only the selected information, and given that the budget is telling us that it's an administrative expense, we can go ahead and put a label for an administrative expense, which is one. And if it's not administrative expense, as you can see in other cases, there is a zero. So let's go ahead for this one. If it's administrative, you don't need to tag it because there is a different procedure for that. If it's administrative, as you can see, let's go back to the PDF file. We have program number one, policy and administration, and activity two, treasury, with 14.8 million. So that's the same information that we have here. I might want to actually highlight this one so that you can better see it on your screen. And we basically have that information where we found that the total for that year is 14.8 million. That is a non-administrative budget. So we put a zero, and then we allocate an SG target. So this is a moment to actually warn the user or the person or the people who are going to compile the SDG budget tag that for the purpose of calculating this in Excel, we have to use a different numbering, because if you look at the SDG at the SDG framework, you will realize that there are multiple SDG targets that have letters in them. And so that might be noisy for the user, because letters and numbers do not necessarily mix well in Excel, in Microsoft Excel. So let's see an example here. Let's go to, this is I'm showing you the global indicator framework. It looks like this once you download the latest version. Um, so we have uh, SDG target 1.1, which is extreme poverty eradication. Second one is to reduce the 1.2 is to reduce at least by half the proportion of people living in poverty in all its dimensions. And if you go further, you will see that at the end there are letters attached to numbers 1.A, 1.B. The reason behind that at the level of the SDGs is to separate those SDG targets from those what they call means of implementation, which is a way those marked with A's and B's with letters relate to SDG targets that are related to means of implementations for the others, right? So based on that, we cannot, or it's not practical to use the same original numbering or coding, because it will create a lot of noise when we do the calculations, given that it has numbers and letters. So what we usually do is that we just go from one SDG goal one. We can allocate SDG one, the number one to SDG 1.1, and you go like that all the way to the 169 SDG target, which is going to be related to SDG target 17.2, right? So that's going to be our 169. Once we had that numbering, our own internal code, if we can call it that way, it's much easier to proceed with the SG budget tag. So here we have this is related to treasury. So let's say we go into the file, into the indicator file, and we see that 100 SDG target 163 is related to 17.1, which is enhancing global macroeconomic stability through policy coordination and policy coherence, which is basically a way to say that it's important for macro stability, that the expense is trying to support macroeconomic stability. Indeed, treasury management is related to that, so we can put that. In this case, I didn't put any other secondary SDG targets. That's also up to the user, to the person, or to the people, the group of people that does the SDG tag, but you can do it. In this case, I think it's treasury management is about policy stability, right? And given that it's on SDG 17, it actually is going to support all other sustainable development goals, but through macroeconomic stability. So let's do another example. If we go to if we go to the next one, you will see that we have other SDG targets that have been allocated. Given that it's so we would go, if we were starting from scratch, we would go back to the PDF file. Um, this case, the next one after Treasury is going to be budget division. Program 1, Activity 3, Program 1, Activity 3, budget division. And for this fiscal year, which is 2024 and 2025, we see that we have 6 million Fijian dollars, which is right here, right? Um, I did not consider that as as an administrative component or budget line. So therefore, if it's zero, we allocate. In this case, I use the same SDG target because I also think that budget division that the what the budget division does is very much related to macroeconomic stability. So that's why it has 16.3, which again is SG target 17.1. And I also allocated SG targets 164 and 47. 164 is related to policy coherence. Obviously, through budget, we can better create policy coherence. And SG target number 47. So if we go all the way out, which is where 47 will be, is adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislation for the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. Why did I put that? Might sound a little bit crazy, but if you go to the original description, somewhere along this description there should be a mention to gender equality. Okay, here we go. Responsive budgeting to ensure that gender is mainstreamed in the ministry's programs and activities to support government's objective to reduce gender gaps and addressing gender equality. So basically, what the Ministry of Finance is saying here is that part of its budget is going to support gender equality. So that's why I allocated out. Um, if you disagree with with the labels that they have been assigned, you can definitely change those. It's basically a decision that should be at the national level. It shouldn't be from the outside component allocating labels. So basically, please go ahead in future fiscal years and change those labels in case you see there is one that it doesn't apply. And that's how we do the SDG budget tag. That's in a nutshell. Actually, it was very detailed how to do the SDG budget tag, which we put all files, all budget lines within a single Excel file, only copying the necessary information for us to do the SDG budget tag. And then we replicate only the information that is needed, in this case, information related to program, activity, as well as the amount of resources that the budget line has. We determine whether it was of an administrative nature or non-administrative nature. And if it's of non-administrative nature, then that's when we do the tagging. We allocate up to three SDG targets, making sure that we select a main SDG target and secondary SDG targets. That's going to be very important because we're going to allocate 75% of these resources to the main SG target, and then we're going to split the 25 remaining into the other secondary SG targets. Okay, so that's all the information that we need. As mentioned, we don't need the entire budget translated or copied into a Microsoft Excel file, but simply the relevant components that will be useful for us. As mentioned, we want detailed information on the objective, and that's usually at the beginning of each ministry's statement. And we're going to have some basic information to identify what it's trying to do, with the resource allocation. In the next video, we are going to start doing the details of the different procedures for administrative and non-administrative procedures for the SDG Budget Act. Thank you so much and see you in the next one.